Our next speaker is James Gardner, who is the general manager of Spigit, which is an innovation management software firm. In English, what that means is that they set up systems which promote innovation within an organization, and then they do systems that allow you to capture the results of the innovation so that it can be used practically. So at some point, probably around 12:30 this afternoon, when the number of really great ideas coming out of this audience gets to a certain level, we want to go to James's company's systems. He's going to speak. He's going to give a couple of practical examples, one involving a banking and innovation program, but most importantly, he's going to describe how games can make products and services more interesting. In other words, where they can actually improve over time rather than be the short, sharp shock thing that most of the pointsification games have been. James?
Thank you very much for being here to listen to this short session from me on games in enterprises that support innovation. Do you know, a number of years ago, I joined a bank to run their innovation program, and my friend said to me, well, that's dumb. What an oxymoron is that, innovation banks? And I'm thinking, you know, this is a challenge which we have to solve. And the thing is, when you look at bank innovation programs and generally innovation programs at all, the question everyone is trying to answer is, what is the newest thing I can think of today? What is the newest brand new thing I can think of today? And the thing is that most of the time, in innovation terms, that doesn't really work out. The world's best, biggest, most amazing products, if you look at them over the last decade, the last 10 years, you'll find that most of them have had nothing to do with the next biggest, newest thing. The world's top-selling book series, Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling's. Actually, before she wrote that, there was another series about a young wizard who was bespectacled, who went to a school, boarding school in London, and he, the guy who wrote that, was a best-selling author before her. Did she copy? Don't know. But certainly this idea that that was something brand new is not necessarily true. So I'm in banking, and I've got this thing about having to create new things to sort of make new money for this bank. I've got this thing going on. And we know that these breakthroughs in the past have not paid. And I'm desperate. I'm running an innovation program which is probably about to be cancelled because we simply weren't making the money that we needed to make. And in desperation, having decided that my team and I would not be able to create the next great breakthrough that would change the world, I turned to the crowd. And in the bank I was at, one of the largest banks in the UK, that crowd means all the tellers and all the people in the corporate centre, the people who normally would have no ability to influence anything at all. We turned to them. And we turned to them by creating something really interesting. But before we did that, I got this coming back to me. You know, head of innovation guy, that stuff you're doing, I know you want the crowd to do it, but innovation is not my job. I am here to serve customers. I am here to make the transactions happen. I'm here to answer the phones. That innovation thing, I'm not even doing it. And so I'm a bit stuck. And this is like 6 or 7 years ago when this idea of gamification, this wasn't really even a word that I'd ever heard of. I'm a banker. What's games got to do with banking? We didn't even think of it. But we decided we would try something interesting. And what we tried was building this. This is a game deployed internally at the bank called Innovation Market. And it's essentially a game where you put your ideas into essentially what is a suggestion box. But we did a few interesting things. We created a game where you get virtual currency, and we called them bank beans, every time you gave us an idea. We paid wages in bank beans to these people. And when the teams got together and started having an idea that was really exciting, we allowed that idea to list on a virtual stock market, and now you can buy and sell shares in the ideas that you like with your virtual currency. Well, compared to the suggestion boxes I'd been running before that, this was something of a revolution. There was quite a lot of interest. It spiked really high at the beginning, and we got to a relatively large number of interested users quite quickly, and ideas started to flow. But more than that, ideas started to flow which actually began to get done. $1,200 a month at the top of the thing. We did a number of things to cause that. The first thing I discovered when this was going along is that the game aspect of this became really a high-profile thing across the bank. Everyone is competing to have the highest amount of virtual currency, and they're all bankers, don't forget, so they get this stuff. And they quickly worked out that the rules of the game were such that not only did they have to provide decent ideas, but they had to get them onto the stock market as quickly as possible in order to make the correct amount of money to be at the top of these kinds of leaderboards. And we have our leaderboards on the top number of ideas, leaderboards on the top number of currencies, and all of these other things were going on. And emboldened by the success of this, I thought, well, why don't we do something even more interesting? I'm going to back the bank bean with cash. So now, when you're earning all of these points, actually you can cash them out into real-world money. Well, didn't that just kick over the hornet's nest? So a couple of things immediately happened, and you would think that as a banker I would have got this. The first thing I did was create bank bean hyperinflation. I'm having an entire Brazil happening in front of me. What is happening was I have a fixed rewards budget with which I can back my bank beans. But every time anyone's clicking anything, they're earning points. And so when I had to do the cash outs, suddenly the exchange rate's exploding everywhere. Really an unpopular game dynamic. Kind of stupidly, we immediately go to economic rationales to fix this. The next thing I tried was bank bean taxation. This is the idea. And if I thought hyperinflation was unpopular, you can imagine how taxation was received. But we eventually fixed the problem of hyperinflation, and I discover I actually have a way more significant problem than that, way more significant. I discover that people are in the system, they're putting their ideas in, they're forming teams, and they are selectively working on ideas which are interesting to them, and then they are selectively releasing information into the market to manipulate the price. I had created an environment in which bank employees were being encouraged to do insider trading. And I'm like going, any minute now, will I not only be fired, I'm going to be put in jail. But practically speaking, after I got over myself, what I discovered was this is precisely the behaviour that you actually want to encourage, because they were actually working on those ideas and causing things to happen. And actually, whether they were gaming us or not, the outcome was that we began to make very significant amounts of money from this particular game. I'll give you an example. We had this problem in the branch environment, and the problem was that people would sit on our teller machines, our web teller machines, and fill in the loan applications, and they'd get to right to the end and walk off. And we in the centre are going, so it's a bad form, but it's hardly a priority. We've got to fix our internet banking, which was the priority right then. But the tellers playing this game worked out that actually the problem was the checkbox, the tick the terms and conditions checkbox, is on the left rather than the right. And they get together and they create a huge idea in this game, and it's trading up and down like you wouldn't believe, and in fact there is so much interest, so much going on that we are forced to listen. And so we moved the checkbox. And about 0.25% of the loans that we were no longer getting, we then did get, and that tiny change was worth millions of pounds a month. And this kind of thing done at scale in this particular game proved to be a very powerful driver of value. Anyway, so we'd been doing all of these incremental little things, all very exciting, and then my boss shows up because the bank's about to collapse. We're having a global financial crisis. And she goes, "You are the innovation guy. We hired you to show up with the breakthrough. Where is my breakthrough? And actually, if you don't show up with my breakthrough, then you can just get fired as well." And so we had to start thinking about what the characteristics of these games, these products and services that we were building might be if we were actually going to have a breakthrough that worked, given that fundamental breakthroughs never seem to work in banking. And we started to come up to this idea of what we call twists. Twists are this idea that when you have two or more groups of customers or audience and they interact together, that one side can synergistically introduce relative advantage for the other side. And this is very powerful. I'll give you the best example I can think of. It's a nightclub. Nightclubs are twists. They are platforms in which two groups of people, men and women, come to transact, I say that, in a particular way, come to transact for a particular gain. And when you have, thank you, and when you have more of one group, you get more of the other group. In other words, when you build a twist into something, actually the more it's used, the better it gets. Now in banking, we're entirely commoditised. If someone has a better savings product, everyone's going to have the better savings product. But when you do stuff like this, you have an interesting competitive advantage. This is why, by the way, you often see these nightclub owners promoting ladies' nights. The idea that if you're a lady, you can get in for either a reduced cover charge or no cover charge, and maybe your drinks will be cheaper, because by doing that, they know that all the men are going to come. When you build games and products that have these behaviours, very interesting things start to happen. So we expanded our search to look for the kinds of characteristics which we could build into banking products that would do these things. And we started to discover a few things. When you build a game or a product in which there is observability that increases the more people are in it, you start to get these effects. You're probably unfamiliar with this thing. Smarty Pig is a social savings product. It's very, very interesting. You publish your savings goals and the whole thing publishes on the internet, and as more people see what you are doing, the amount of saving increases. It's about publishing what you're doing rather than holding it a secret. Smarty Pig has become hugely successful because of that. So this observability, this virality thing was one thing. The next thing we found after we were doing an analysis is this one. If you can create these dynamics, these platform twist dynamics around herds, where everyone follows in the same direction, then you have a competitive advantage in your product and service, which is really hard to beat. I'll use a historical example here. Around the 1800s, the British government signed a treaty with Spain that would enable it to trade with the new Spanish colonies in South America. The treaty organisation was subject to frenzied speculation in London, and lords and senior people in the government all went bankrupt by speculating on this huge herd thing that went on, really exciting game, when actually it crashed. What was powerful about this, and which was not observed by everyone, was that the treaty allowed one shipload of products per year to be sent there. But the power of the game caused these amazing things to happen. And the final thing we noticed as we started to do a few things was this idea. What if you can get people to perform experiments? Experiments in terms of a crowd. And if you can do that so that the product improves as the experiments occur, then again, you have one of these amazing competitive advantages. And we found this site, which is one of my favourite sites ever. You put in a symptom that you have. If you've got an illness, you put in your illness, you put in your symptoms, you put in the things that you've tried, and then it aggregates all of those statistics across thousands of people to come up with stuff. This site discovered that the best cure for depression is not in fact drugs, it happens to be exposure to sunlight. Can you imagine a drug company that actually would run such a clinical trial? But these are exactly the same in terms of the statistical validity of that. And when you put this kind of behaviour into a product, you get some amazing things. Well, anyway, as I mentioned, the bank was one of many banks in England at the time that was under significant issue, and at that particular moment we got this guy in. This is the Prime Minister of the UK, Gordon. He's joined, the Prime Minister of the UK, and he takes over basically everything, and he sets that there's going to be this new policy of engagement. We're going to have what we call the big society. And interestingly, at that particular time, I was appointed to be Chief Technology Officer in the UK as well. And so I picked up my innovation program from the bank and I dumped it into government. And I thought, well, maybe I got insider trading working and not getting fired before. What will it mean if I see if I can get all of these disengaged, totally ossified civil servants to create innovation? And so I plugged it in, put the same game in with some of the dynamics I've been talking to you about, with only one exception. And the exception was no ability to pay out against the currency. It was just a game, no currency. And lo and behold, everything worked in exactly the same way. And this game is now deployed in 17 government departments and has saved the UK government tens of millions of pounds in just 9 months. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed my speech.
James, thank you for those practical examples of how to use money, sex, and peer pressure to get great results. On Smarty Pig, in Smarty Pig, it would be useful to say why did that work? In other words, why did basically publishing how you did and how you failed in your savings goals actually promote more activity? Can you give a brief summary?
Yes, I can. This idea of observability or virality, which is another way of putting it, when you share as part of some dynamic, when you share an outcome that was previously secret and where your success in getting to that outcome is something communal, it tends to result in one of those twists I was talking about, where increasing number of people coming in drives further numbers of people coming in, and you get this interesting exponential growth, and that's what makes Smarty Pig such an interesting case study.
Thank you very much.